There are 1,000,000 ways to die. We just wanna talk about it. Codeheads.
This is our newest Codehead, Mookie. Oh, he's not interested actually in any longer being a part of Codeheads.
I don't
Are
blame
you?
him.
Are you over Codeheads? Oh, he's over it. The newest addition to the Codehead family. And for those of you just listening, he's a really adorable black and white little mutt from down south, named Mookie. After Mookie Blaylock, which is Pearl Jam's moniker. Big Pearl Jam fan here. All right, moving right along to Codeheads territory. So today we wanted to switch gears a little bit and do a breakdown, kind of a Hollywood breakdown of Pulp Fiction. So we're actually calling this Pulse Fiction because there is a little bit of a misnomer with the Pulp Fiction scene. From the 1994 Quentin Tarantino movie. So it was made back in the 1900s.
Wow.
Yeah, that was our era, the 1900s. So for those of you younger than us, we might have to describe things a little bit, but for anyone around our age group, it was like a really poignant movie, and it was really like, oh my gosh, it was kind of huge when it came out. And this scene was
This is not exaggeration. I went to see that movie in the theater 6 times.
You did?
Yeah, I was like 20 or something, maybe 21. But yeah, 6 times. I mean, again, when you said it's huge, I can't begin to describe how big it was.
Yeah, it was like everyone saw it.
Yeah.
And if you didn't see it, it was like, you didn't see Pulp Fiction?
Yeah.
And this scene, everyone talked about, everyone, it was like, oh my God. Did you see when Uma Thurman overdosed?
Yeah.
And then they had to, revive her
Mhm.
and the shot to the heart. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to show the scene.
Mhm.
And then we are going to kind of break it down of kind of why it's a little bit inaccurate, but why it's also important that we, know what to do for out of hospital overdoses and how to treat them and what not to do, I guess. What not to lean in on Hollywood. So we're going to show the scene now.
All right, ready? 1. 2. 3.
So in this scene, Uma Thurman's character, she had been out with John Travolta. They'd had this lovely night, just a wild night of dancing and doing cocaine and fun stuff. John Travolta had some, heroin in his pocket, just for some later personal use. But when they got back to his place, Uma, I guess, went through the pocket, found the little baggie and thought it was cocaine. So she set up herself for a fat line, blew that fat line, and immediately, boom, down for the count because it was pure heroin, which is a little bit different. So she immediately overdoses, and John Travolta comes out and he's like, oh my gosh, realizes what happened. And then he kind of calls the troops and is like, oh no, she's dead. And calls in some friends to come. And it's this really chaotic, wild scene. And everyone's just frantic and running in. And they have this friend who is like a
Lance.
kind of.
Lance, played by Eric Stoltz.
Yes, and he just has a whole pharmacy, right? And so he's whipping out a medical book, and while Uma's sitting there overdosing and no one's doing anything, he's flipping through the medical book and he's like, oh my God, this is what we need to do. And he has this enormous syringe that they fill with adrenaline, aka epinephrine. and they're like debating over her body, like who's going to administer it, blah, blah, blah. And they finally just like mark a spot. They put use a red marker and make a dot on her chest. And they just like, and John Travolta sits there with that syringe for what feels like forever. And he just jams it right into her chest and squirts it in. And then she jolts up immediately and basically screams. And they're like, "You're fine. You're okay now." And then she was. So that's the scene. But that was really that was huge for all of us, because I think that most of us had not experienced an overdose at that stage of our lives. Seeing a friend or seeing a human or treating a patient, because I think I was only like 17 or 18, seeing it. That was like wild. And I walked out of that movie being like, "Oh, that's what you do. That's how you treat an overdose."
Yeah.
Like knowing
Heart.
yeah, we were like, "Oh, if someone overdoses on heroin, you just jab a needle right into their heart of adrenaline."
Yep.
Got
Drop 60 cc's and just
it. Right in the heart, right in the center of the heart, not even marking anything,
through the sternum.
Yeah.
No problem.
We didn't know any better, so that's what we thought.
Mind that. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the medical inaccuracies that are in that scene, because I think
Okay.
we're
For one, all right, so these are not medical experts, clearly. And what they there's ambiguity. They think certainly she could be dead, or it's an overdose, which mimics death, mimics cardiac arrest, because they're barely breathing. And if they
Right.
are breathing, it's shallow. So in fairness, for the lay rescuer, they're not going to know exactly what's going on. So when he consults his manual, he draws up, like you said, the epinephrine, which in fact, for a person in cardiac arrest, as we all know, is an appropriate intervention, right? Per the
Yeah.
AHA, we give 1 milligram every 3 to 5 minutes. In addition to, though, a very important intervention, compressions.
Yeah.
So if they think she's dead, the epinephrine is going to be of zero use without compressions. And the location of the intervention, as you mentioned,
Right.
ICI, an intracardiac injection, if that is going to occur, which it does not, would not go right through the breastplate, which is a pretty strong shield.
Correct.
It
Yeah.
might go lateral to the left side, perhaps between the ribs where there's some softness. Okay. So they weren't doing compressions. So she would not be revived if she, in fact, was in cardiac arrest. She has no chance. They could fill her up with all that adrenaline, epinephrine, and again, it will not resolve anything. So they didn't have that. And if she was an overdose, they didn't have the medication that would be required to revive her. And what medication is that?
That would be Narcan.
Ooh, okay.
Naloxone.
And what is that? Is it an opiate antagonist by chance?
I believe that it is. Which binds with the opiates so that it reverses the symptoms of the overdose, right? And so I think that's actually a really interesting point, because I just look at it as like, oh, he assumed she overdosed, and then they're giving her adrenaline, so they just he's whipping through that medical book, he might have skipped that page. But on the flip side, because he clearly had a whole pharmacy, so he may very well have had Narcan and just skipped over it, and went right to the adrenaline, assuming she was dead. But they didn't really check for a pulse. They didn't really check for breathing. They didn't support her, obviously, with compressions or with rescue breaths. So we just went right into a huge conversation over this woman who was either presumed dead or overdosing. And but giving the Narcan, that looked like a hefty dose. I mean, obviously, we don't know the exact milligrams or whatever but it was a huge syringe, thick, wide, with a large needle. Like it appeared to be a 6-inch needle. I don't know how big it actually was, but it was ginormous. And then they just like shove it right in there and give it right to the heart. So Narcan, when we give it, whether we give it IV or we're giving it intranasally or whatever, it does not, you don't react that quickly. Like you don't immediately get Narcan and sit up and just scream, like, just to cut out any misnomers. You can scream and get very violent and whatever. However, that's usually like a minute delay because
Yeah.
there are times that you give Narcan that you're like, "Oh, no, it's not working." And then all of a sudden, "Oh, yep, it did." You've gotta give each dose about a minute or 2 between, to let it really bind to all those opiates and to do its job.
And especially if you are new and you haven't witnessed this before, it's very hard to wait 1 minute when someone isn't responsive. It's,
Ugh.
time is relative. It seems like an eternity. It seems like you're not helping them, you're letting them die. But that is a fact because you could give too much Narcan if you're not patient. Because it's like, all right, it's been 15 seconds. Uma Thurman came back. Why isn't this person coming back? Right. So
Yeah.
it is important to wait. And if, you are a medical professional, you might know that you want to titrate to effect, where he, the amount that Lance, Eric Stoltz, administered, say it was Narcan, is way, like you said, way over the maybe 2 milligrams we might want to deliver.
For
Right.
sure.
So if
Yeah,
we
'cause
do too much, the reaction might lead to a more volatile patient, and a reaction perhaps like Uma's, even though, like you said, it would be it would be delayed. So the patience between administering those doses is important. I do believe that takes some experience, to just wait. Just wait.
yeah.
And let me
It's
just add,
hard.
they the issue what they're dealing with when they're in that overdose state is severe respiratory depression. So ideally, what we would be doing with the BVM, BLSing on scene is rescue breathing. And they're not doing that or anything else except, that
Yeah. That
that's all they're doing. I mean, they're doing their best with what they had,
they are
but
just jamming that big syringe in that heart and just staring. They
but we're
are
doing,
they are
yeah.
jabbing and praying.
We have a hypoxic, hypercarbic patient that requires respiratory assistance, ventilations. If they are in fact alive, and if they are dead, they need, as we all know, CPR, AED, ventilations. Okay.
Right, and move forward to really resuscitate them.
Yes. I wish it
Um,
was easy. I wish the needle through the chest. That'd be fun to do. And and it would be, we don't have to have anything else going on. Great.
right. I know, just sit there and jab and then stare.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's not what we do, and we don't want anyone to think that that's what they should do when they are, out in public. And I do think that, you know, if you are not a healthcare provider and you know people who do drugs, such as, opiates, and I've had issues with overdosing. Hopefully, you do have, the intranasal Narcan that you can get, that is easy to administer, and you just, stick it up the nose and boop, right into the nostril and administer the drug. But it is really important, that waiting period, because you're taking someone who's, obviously overdosing and in like la la land, mentally. And then if you give too much, as Mike said, even if you're giving the intranasal dose and you give one and then you wait like 2 seconds, or like, they didn't wake up, and you give the other dose, they are going to go into like immediate withdrawal, which is
Immediate.
sometimes why they get so violent, because it hurts. Actually, it physically
Yeah.
hurts them, like mentally, physically, everything. And it can
Yeah.
actually cause some
Yeah.
medical issues by over reversing.
I
So
mean, yeah, and just I mean, like you said, they are in la la land. You've shut that off instantly, right?
mhm,
So imagine how jarring that might be. They wake up, they're surrounded by people, they're not sure of their location, not even maybe sure what happened. They're
yeah,
freezing cold, they're nauseous, and one reaction could be seizures. So you're talking
yeah,
about instant withdrawal that could lead to seizures. Now you have multiple issues with this patient.
right.
So, being measured is critical, especially with that medication, because you don't want a UMA-like reaction
You do not. I mean,
outside of
we
the
love Uma, but we don't want to be Uma-like.
you don't want that. You want a respiratory drive to return, and
Correct.
keep them stabilized, watch them like a hawk, transport, deal, so
And I also think and you brought up a good point too, is that these patients, a lot of times when they wake up, even if they're not waking up screaming or freaking out, they will, vomit.
yeah,
And so we want to make sure that we're able to like turn them on their side so they're not then aspirating and,
yeah.
getting all that vomit back into their lungs. Um, because that happens. And, I just saw that a couple weeks ago for a pre-hospital overdose that a patient was given, Narcan, and they didn't kind of turn them to their side or they didn't help them. And they vomited a ton and it all went into their lungs. And, so then they came to the hospital and they ended up having to be in the ICU for a while, intubated while we had to clear up that aspiration pneumonia that then occurred on top of everything else. So,
Yeah, I mean, you woke them up and that's great, but they are still quite vulnerable.
right.
It's still a high risk patient. I mean, they're out of that overdose, but it can return. They could even go into arrest, just from that react. I mean, there's so much going on. So it's like we wake them up. It's not like, oh, good.
Yeah. Done. High five.
They need a close watch before discharge.
It's just like getting Rosk, right? You don't just give a high five and walk out of the room because
Right.
20 minutes later they might need another dose of Narcan.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
and so it is, I think that there is that kind of misnomer out there that if you, especially for lay people, if you're out there at a, party and you find someone that's overdosing and you give them Narcan, maybe not even at a party, whatever, you walk up to someone and they're overdosing and you give them Narcan and they're now awake, great, you saved them and you did for for right now, but we still need to make sure that they get to emergency care. We
Yes.
still need to, that's not the end of the line. There's the next step of making sure that they have continued care. And that is why that is known as pulse fiction, because
Oh.
I'm not sure that Uma would have made it in the long run had that overdose been treated that way and,
And
just
yep.
left
And
to go home.
John Travolta's character, Vincent Vega, would be in deep trouble with Marcellus Wallace if his wife, Uma, did die. It would be a bad
Correct.
for
Yeah.
him.
Yes, they skipped all sort of standard interventions and just kind of usurped all medical knowledge and
Yes.
just, dropped her off at home. And, she lived to tell the tale. But, in real life, I don't think that would be the case. So it's
Um,
important to,
sorry. One thing I wanted to mention is, so she thought she was doing cocaine.
mhm.
And one thing now, or, within the past 5 years, maybe a little more, you've heard about is fentanyl being
Mm,
added to cocaine. So people are in fact overdosing secondary to the opiate, even though there is cocaine in that powder. But so it's kind of like people don't know what they're snorting anymore
yep.
and don't expect to go into an arrest from an opiate when really you're trying to take a stimulant.
Right. Right.
So that has changed, or maybe I just never heard about it 20 years ago being combined like that. And this is fentanyl, which is, very dangerous. It's not the synthetic fentanyl we use in hospital or out of hospital. This is coming from God knows where and mixed with God knows what. So
Yes, that's a valid point because people, because a cocaine overdose is very different from like an opiate overdose,
yeah,
including fentanyl. And I actually just read an article this week that the new fentanyl has a derivative that they're adding into it, and I'm forgetting the name of it off the top of my head, but it is non-responsive to Narcan
wow, yeah,
or lesser responsive to Narcan. So that's also something to think about, and it's starting to hit the US. It's hit other areas, and it's coming into the US now.
yeah,
So,
it's true. I mean, I recall, like, especially patients that we've been familiar with that did this. There was a tolerance to the Narcan. Like we were
mhm.
pushing more and more, and that speaks to not only people that are chronic users, but also, like you just said, like the substance being so strong that's being mixed within. So
Yeah,
it's yeah. So it's interesting, and these, like we just said, are very high risk patients.
right. So now we know, just to sum everything up, we can't believe everything we see in Hollywood. Don't take medical advice from movies. Make sure that if you see an overdose that you're using Narcan, not straight adrenaline to the heart, uh, and usually intranasal Narcan, and make sure that they get emergency care afterwards. And I would say the last point is just always listen to Codeheads and follow us and like us and reach out.
Yeah, we just saved you some embarrassment. Now you know how to treat a patient that goes into overdose.
We
Like
did.
a
You're welcome.
There are 1 million ways to die. We just wanna talk